All team, give it everything you got.
It's time to fangirl flail with Fangirls Going Rogue.
Count me in.
I don't think there's anything more important in the Star Wars universe than the fans.
News, discussion, and commentary from the female point of view.
You call this a diplomatic solution?
No, I call it aggressive negotiations.
With your hosts, Teresa Delgado, Tricia Barr, and Sarah Woloski.
Boy, am I glad to hear your voice.
Strap in, because this is where the fun begins.
I like the sound of that.
Welcome, everyone, to the first episode of Fangirls Going Rogue. You talk, we listen. This is Tricia Barr, one of the founders and co-host of Fangirls Going Rogue. We talked during our planning session for the beginning of 2017, and while we were having that discussion, Sarah Woloski and Teresa Delgado, my wonderful co-hosts, we realized that we were making oral history with our podcast. One of our goals has always been not just to showcase that there are a lot of different opinions in Star Wars fandom, but also to elevate other fans and show them how to podcast, teach them how to do it, give them the experience. So this series is dedicated to us giving other people a chance to talk about what they enjoy and also giving us a chance to listen. So you'll hear one of us come on, we're going to ask questions, and we're going to invite some of our fellow fans to share what they loved. Rogue One is a perfect opportunity to do that. And we also thought that starting our Facebook discussion group, which you can join, just go to Fangirls Going Rogue and ask to be invited. It's a closed group. That we could highlight two of our administrators. And you guys probably know from social media, Sandra, who helps us out, who does all the Twitter, gets the chats going, and she's really engaging people in the Facebook group. And we wanted to also invite one of our other admins, Adjua Adama, on. They're longtime friends. You'll get to hear a little bit of their story and hear their experience going to see Rogue One and their thoughts, which it was lovely to just sit and listen and ask questions. So you guys enjoy.
The world is coming undone. Imperial flags reign across the galaxy.
We have intercepted a coded Imperial transmission. It indicates that a major weapons test is imminent.
The message was sent by your father.
We need to know what it is and how to destroy it.
This is our chance to make a real difference.
Hi, everybody. This is Sandra, also known as Geek Chick 9 on Twitter.
All right, my name is Adjua Adama, and I'm also on Adjua Adama at Twitter. You know, I've been a Star Wars fan since I was 5 years old, and a lot of what you see in the films are precisely guiding me into everything that I've been interested in since I was 5 years old, including being a teacher, including being a pilot, including being a musician, all that kind of stuff. I can look at George, I can look at Steven Spielberg, and some of the other things that happened in those films pretty much made me interested in everything that I've done in life.
Well, my path to Star Wars is totally different. I mean, I was born in Haiti. I didn't come to America until I was 9 years old. I remember we had one TV in like the entire block, and the first anything sci-fi that I was aware of was Lost in Space. So that was my first time even seeing anything sci-fi. So when I came to America, just through friends and, and other people, I was introduced, I should say, to Star Wars and fell in love with it. So fell in love with the characters, the stories, the whole science fiction part of it. I fell in love with that. So that was my introduction to Star Wars.
I would like to know both of your favorite movies, and you can do what I call the Teresa Delgado and hedge and say more than one. For Star Wars, what's your favorite Star Wars?
For me, it's Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah, for me, it's the same. And the interesting thing is like a lot of fans, that's fluctuated over the years. As many people claim Empire today, we weren't largely claiming Empire when we were young. For all of us, for the most part, it was Return of the Jedi. Because you got the conclusion, you got the end of the war, at least we thought. You got Luke finally being a Jedi. You get that green lightsaber for the first time. We had, people don't understand this unless you grew up during the original trilogy. We had blue and we had red for a better part of 6 or 7 years, and then all of a sudden we get this green one, and it's like the greatest thing ever. And Empire was sort of the character tale, and as a result, for young people, it kind of moved a little slow, and then it left you with the cliffhanger, and you were like, well, what's going to happen? You had to wait 3 years for that, that conclusion. And then as you start to get older, you start to get more mature, and you start to recognize certain things that directors and writers do. Then all of a sudden you go back and say, you know what, actually, it was Empire that was the best film. So that changed for us.
Were you friends prior to knowing that each other was Star Wars fans, or did Star Wars bring you together?
We went to the same college. We went to Penn State. So we knew each other just through Facebook, honestly, social media. And we actually live in the same city. We live, like maybe 5 minutes away from one another. And just through friends, we just, I had Star Wars tickets. And a friend of ours was supposed to go, and she missed out because she had something to do. So I was like, hey, we still want to go, so let's go.
Sandra, you're about, I think, 2 years younger than me. So I think when you first got to Penn State, I think it was in my junior year. Mm-hmm. I can't remember exactly, but I want to say, because the year you were a freshman, I was the president of Black Caucus up there, and I think was at one of the meetings when we first met, if I'm remembering correctly. And,
you have a better memory than me.
Yeah. And like I said, it was really a brief, sort of meeting in that regard. And I didn't really know a whole lot about you at that time. But of course, as a result of social media, that's sort of where, everybody got a chance to reconnect after we all left, school and things of that nature. And it just so happened to be, and I think you were still living in Florida at the time. I think it just happened to be, I just happened to see a lot of your pictures where you posting things about, Star Wars or just geek culture in general and that sort of thing. I was like, oh, wait a second, she must be a fan. And then I remember at the time, that's when I had just, not long before that, I had just come across the Force Cast, Jason and Jimmy. And I was like, you know what, you probably would be interested in this as well. And I think that was really the start of getting involved with the online fan community from there, and just kind of went from there.
Yeah, you were the first person to introduce the whole Rebel Force radio to me, because I had no idea it existed until then.
You're talking about, being Empire Strikes Back was a different movie, and then now social media, you can find people again and realize the things that they like. And even it's funny because you hear the Force Cast and Rebel Force radio, and some people don't even know that the one came from the other. I mean, yeah, it's so crazy. So you guys decided to go see Rogue One together, and did you go opening night?
This was at that Thursday night, like around 7 or 7:30, something along those lines. And so when the tickets went online, Sandra went out and got all the tickets for us. So it was just like, I didn't even have to worry about it. She just got it all organized, and I was like, oh, okay, I just need to show up. Okay, cool. So it just kind of worked out that way.
And it was crazy because I posted online. I was like, you know what? I had to wake up at midnight to purchase these tickets. Literally, my phone around midnight, like 12:01, I had about 3 messages. I had a friend call me at midnight to make sure I was awake so I could buy these tickets, because they know I'm a huge fan. So I had about 10 messages at midnight. Hey, wake up, get your tickets now, get your tickets. So it was exciting. And we got a chance to go that Thursday. So it was fun.
Did you have problems getting your tickets, and what did you do it through? Because that's, some people did and some people didn't. So I'm curious.
I didn't do Fandango. Actually, I just went directly to the theater, and it was so much easier to get those tickets. So I just went online because we had agreed, okay, this would be probably the best theater to go to. So at midnight, I went online, and it was, in less than 5 minutes, I had the ticket.
Yeah, and I think ticket sales in general, even though they were strong compared to other films, for Star Wars right now, it was sort of a slow boil. So you did have a lot of people that were interested and wanted to go, but it was nowhere near opening weekend, which you would have seen with The Force Awakens last year. And so, it was pretty easy for me to also jump right after that and get subsequent tickets, because I went the very next day to see it in IMAX 3D. And I had no problem getting tickets then. And then I waited the day of on Saturday, and I saw it again. and had no problems online getting tickets either. So even though it is successful in general, it was nowhere near, what you would have had to have done to see episode 7 last year, where everybody and their grandmother was trying to make it in that first weekend.
So how many times have you seen it?
I've seen it 5.
Okay. I think you got me by 1.
Yeah.
Okay, so then that leads to what formats have you seen it in for each of you, and do you have a preference?
I can't do 3D. I can't do any of those things because I get headaches. So it's just too deep for me.
Yeah, like I said, I've seen it in both 2D and 3D IMAX. There's a 3D IMAX screen near us up in Columbia, Maryland. I always try to see it in 2D first, just to get the general experience of what the film is and what they were trying to do with it. But I could tell that there's a big difference between Rogue One and Episode 7, because 7 was actually filmed in IMAX with IMAX cameras, and you could tell that they really wanted that 3D and that IMAX presentation to be very strong, and it was. And the majority of the time that I saw Episode 7, I actually saw it in 3D IMAX, and it was amazing. The way, as far as the scope of the picture and the detail and everything that you could pick up with, they didn't do that for Rogue One. And so my experience with Rogue One was much better in 2D rather than in 3D IMAX. And so I only saw it once in 3D IMAX, and the other times it was always 2D, and it was a much better picture. It was a lot clearer, and the colors were crisper. It was a very dark film, film grade wise in the 3D IMAX. You could tell they just didn't really plan for it to be that way, even though it did exist there in that medium. Yeah. But I will say that the crowd was much better in the 3D IMAX. I saw it on that Friday, and I would say about 90-95% were all super fans. And a lot of these people came in and they were dressed up and they had the lightsabers and all that kind of thing. And every time something happened, they were yelling and cheering and clapping. And the next cameo came up, they were yelling and cheering and clapping. And at the end of the film, standing ovation. That was the best crowd to see the film in.
Yeah, because that Thursday, it was really low-key. I mean, there were some people really got excited, but then it was, I don't know if it was because it was so late, but people were just really chilled for that Thursday night.
Yeah, and every other time that I've seen it, the crowds were exactly like that. And it's like, every once in a while, K2SO would crack a joke and people would laugh, but for the most part, everybody was just quiet. And then you would hear the murmur after the film was over. You could tell that people enjoyed it. And I actually happened to see it with a work colleague of mine. And he and his wife were there. And afterwards, they really enjoyed it as well. But nobody made a sound throughout the entire film. And it was just that one time when I saw it in IMAX 3D that everybody was yelling and screaming and all kinds of stuff. That was a great time.
I'm curious maybe if some of those people had already seen it once, because I feel like the first time it's almost overwhelming. Like, it was a Friday, you said, that they had the great reaction?
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure that if it was the same crowd that Thursday, would have done the same thing. I don't think that I could tell, because that was my second time seeing the film, and I knew things were coming up. And I could tell these people did not, because every time something reacted or something happened, they were gasping or they were clapping like, oh, my God, I didn't know that was going to come. Or that sort of thing. They were reacting visibly and audibly, through things where I already knew that stuff was coming up.
Were you expecting the ending, let's say, where we pretend people are listening already know what happens at the end, that we would lose the whole heroic team? Was that an expectation that either of you had going in, or did you think, well, they wouldn't do that, this is a Disney film?
I was in shock, because I don't want to say shock. I thought that they were all going to die, but I thought it was going to be at the hands of Vader. At least that's what I wanted, because that's one of my favorite characters. I really wanted to see that dark side of him, and that's what I was expecting. But the way it ended was a complete shock for me.
Yeah, well, for me, it wasn't. I knew they wanted to do a war film, and I know a lot of people were saying, "Oh, it's Disney, and they're not going, allow the characters to die, and they're going to keep going on." And I'm like, look, first of all, if you understand Disney, even when it comes to the animated features going all the way back to the 40s and 50s, they're known for certain characters dying. They're known for the parents dying. They're known for, they deal with certain issues. They may not show graphic interpretations of what's happening, but they're not afraid of dealing with issues. The other thing, of course, is that Disney owns so many properties now under Bob Iger. You got to remember that they own ABC. And a lot of us, watch, Shonda Rhimes and all of her TV shows, and then you get into, some of the stuff that happens with some of the other things that they do. It's like, there is this impression that Disney is going to make everything a fantasy and they're not going to deal with certain elements. Mm-hmm. And it's just totally false. The other thing, of course, is that they were throwing out hints already before the film dropped, because they said that, we study older films just like George studied older films. And one of the films that they mentioned was Dirty Dozen. And when you see films like that, or you see like Seven Samurai, then that's what I was thinking it was going to be like. It was going to be, they're going to get this ragtag group of people, they're going to do this mission, and most of them are going to die in the process of actually succeeding with the mission. And then we find out, of course, that they all died. But it didn't surprise me, because those are the kinds of stories that I think that they were trying to tell, and what they were using as inspiration.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Sandra, do you think maybe this raises the stakes for every movie to come after this?
I would definitely say so. I mean, I think Rogue One was probably the perfect Christmas present for Star Wars fans. I mean, I loved it. The action sequence, again, I'm going to keep saying this, I'm a Vader lover. And just seeing him on screen, I think everyone in the theater that we were sitting in when Vader came out, we saw that lightsaber, and I mean, everybody was like, oh my gosh, it's Vader. Like, the reactions, I mean, people were clapping. I mean, it was a sad situation. People were dying, but people were clapping because we got to see Darth Vader in action. I mean, this frightening character that everyone fears, and we we got to see him in action. So we love that. We loved it.
Yeah, same here. That was by far my favorite moment in film, and I've mentioned this online before. I said, Vader has always been a favorite character of mine because he reminds me of my grandfather. Growing up, he has sort of that presence. He was cocky just like Vader was. He was taller than a lot of my other family members. That side of my family is taller than my father's side, and he was taller. And he also had a dark side. And I mean, it was just one of those things that it just kind of imbues a lot of what I saw. And so anytime you have that presence there, and then of course James Earl Jones coming back with the voice, and I always thought that Lucas missed an opportunity in episode 3 to kind of give us that in that moment. I sort of half expected it to be at the end of the film back in 2010. And so when we didn't get it, I really appreciated what he did at the end of the film. But I always wanted, we all wanted that moment to really see Vader in his visceral prime, when he just doesn't care about anybody or anything other than just trying to be as dark as possible. And I think Gareth Edwards understood that, which is why I think you see that moment at the very end. Because what I envisioned what would have happened at the end of 3 is exactly what happened at the end of Rogue One, almost to the T.
That was done in reshoots, the Vader stuff.
Yeah, I read it.
Exactly.
I mean, I found out about 2 weeks ago.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I saw that.
They felt like they needed more, and the reaction to that moment is it definitely kind of, it's like, wow, okay, he's Vader.
and it was one of my favorite scenes. I mean, I love that scene with Vader, and I think one of my other favorite scenes was the interaction between Saul and Jen. When she was looking at the message from her father. I mean, that scene I thought it was a powerful scene. And then the one with Vader were probably my 2 favorites from the film.
And I always keep pointing that moment out as well. It's like, there's a reason why you hire Felicity Jones for that particular part, is because she has that ability to convey those feelings that, you don't always get a chance to put into the dialogue or to put into the story. You just have 15 seconds to emote. And it's like, okay, 3, 2, 1, go. And then she has it all right there. It's like, even if you don't really get a chance to go directly into her backstory and fill all those moments in, you emotionally connect to that because she has the ability to perform in that way. And it's the same thing with Forrest Whitaker. It's like, if you want somebody to go crazy, and we're still waiting for the complete story behind how Saw Gerrera lost his mind, which we sort of got we sort of understand with the visual guide, and then of course we saw some of it in Rebels. And Freddie Prinze Jr. basically said that we haven't seen the last of Saw on the show. So I think the moment where he loses his leg and really goes crazy and all of a sudden looks like Frederick Douglass, I think that is still coming up in Rebels. When you have a character, when you bring in somebody like Forrest Whitaker, it doesn't matter if he doesn't look like the character did in Clone Wars. And it doesn't matter if he doesn't sound like Andrew Kashino. The simple fact is he's Forrest Whitaker, and he can act crazy, and he can really throw it out there, and just you just create that kind of a moment or that kind of a person in that situation where he can just totally lose his mind, but it actually does feel real because he is that caliber of a performer.
Did you guys feel like there was? I mean, I know Forrest Whitaker talked about it, kind of the parallels to him, almost to Vader. Even in the way he breathing in, and I kind of got chills when he did that on screen. Oh yeah, absolutely. There's a moment that I love the most. I think it's when you first see him or when Jen first sees him, and he's just kind of standing there and he's looking off like to the lower right of the screen, and he breathes in and he yanks it back, and there's like this drool that kind of purses around his mouth, and it's sort of like that Viola Davis approach. Like every time you see her and, she really starts to go off, the snot comes out of her nose. And it's like all of that is there. And it just creates that visceral, emotional moment, even if it only lasts for a few seconds. And that's the reason why you bring in, some of these people, even if the part isn't that big.
I'd have to agree with that.
All right. So, Sandra, who was your favorite character in this movie?
Now I'm a Vader lover.
Okay, let's say new character. We'll go new character that lived and died in Rogue One.
And died.
I'm gonna hedge that question.
You know what? I love the droid K2SO. I mean, I connected with Jen. I mean, I loved her character. She was a strong female lead. But the droid, I mean, the droid had charisma. The droid was funny. K2SO was funny. I mean, he just, I don't know, for some reason, he just really stood out for me in the film. And I loved everything about him. It's almost like this droid sacrificed everything for the people that he was with. And I love that. So K2SO, I'll go with K2SO.
I was really appreciative of a lot of the characters in the film. I'll say Cassian, because he introduced a part of the rebellion that is very real, but we really just haven't seen yet. Where they're involved in trying to take down evil, but of course evil is the legitimate government of the galaxy. So that means if you're going to take them down, you have to engage in some things that are untoward, so to speak. And he goes through a lot of those moral questions throughout the film, and so it kind of added a little bit of spice into Star Wars that did not exist in the past. So he was an intriguing character. Now, if we go back to the book, then it would have to be Krennic, because I'm a big fan of House of Cards, and I could tell sort of that James Luceno was probably watching House of Cards while he was writing that book, because Krennic was Frank Underwood to the fullest extent, and the entire arc that he goes through in that book is season 1/season 2 of House of Cards. I mean, it was outstanding, and it's too bad that we couldn't see any of that in the film, because he was, of course, on his downslide by that point.
So you didn't like Cassian because he was a pilot like you, so that's not it at all?
Cassian wasn't a pilot. You talking about Bodhi?
No, I mean Cassian at one point wasn't he flying the planes too? Wasn't he piloting at one point?
It was mostly K2SO that was doing the flying.
Oh, okay, because I thought at one point he was piloting one of the ships. So I was like, okay, maybe that's why he likes it. He likes Cassian. Okay.
K2SO sits in what we would traditionally think of as like Han Solo's side, if the driver's
yeah,
side.
he's sitting on the pilot side, which is on the left side, and Cassian's sitting in the first officer side, which is on the right hand side.
Favorite moments don't necessarily align with favorite characters, so can each of you give a favorite moment or two?
Well, let's put it this way: there were two really strong moments for me. I think both of them were when they were on Jeddah. When Saw's group opens up on the troops. And the first thing I thought to myself is, I already knew from way back when that they were hiring, the technicians and the cinematographers for some of the best war films out there. And that was the first time where I really felt like, okay, this is more than just a Star Wars film. This is Saving Private Ryan. This is Black Hawk Down. This is Zero Dark 30. And when they started opening up on each other, you literally would think that you were right there in the Middle East when all of this stuff is erupting, or in some of those battles in World War I and II that take place in the Middle East. And you got the tanks there, and you got the explosions, and people getting sniped up on the bridge. And that little girl whose name has escaped me right now, but she's just, crying right in the middle of the fray. It's like you're throwing in those little doses that happen in realistic combat that we really just don't always get. And we've seen some of that in television, in the animation, both in Clone Wars and on Rebels, but we haven't seen it in the films. And so now they're kind of throwing all that in there. You see the Star Destroyer hovering over top of the city, and you see the TIE fighters flying around in the sky and that kind of stuff. And it's like we've seen this element, and when I was always wishing when you see it in animation, see it in the films, and we actually got it in the films. And so I really love that sequence the most. If we're talking about an entire story arc, it would be the final third of the film, which is one of the best in all of Star Wars.
For me, I really love the ending. Watching, Cassian and Jen just, embracing their fate. I mean, their fate, I would say. They did, they sacrificed their lives, for the good of others. I've always loved, that side of Star Wars. So that really, really, really stood out to me. That was probably one of my favorite scenes. The ending was really stood out to me. I love that. I really love the way it ended.
We talked earlier a little bit about sometimes when you wish, like episode 3, you might have seen more Vader at the end in that. Is there something in this movie that you think, well, maybe I wish I could have seen that, or it would have been different?
Where is Vasquez? and the reason why I throw that out there is because Gareth Edwards has said a number of times that he modeled a lot of what he did in this film around aliens. And of course, he also even filmed certain sequences with Jyn and had Sigourney Weaver in mind. A lot of people have talked about the lack of women represented in the film and represented in the cast. And, when I saw Aliens, Vasquez and there's so many other women that were involved, Farrell and Dietrich and all that sort of thing, but she was my favorite character in the story. And what it basically represents is the fact that you could have had opportunities to have more women in the story and then also involved in the action. And there were a couple of, obviously there were pilots there, but there were a couple of women on the ground, but it's kind of hard to tell because, they're wearing their helmets and all you see them is for maybe 2 or 3 seconds. And they're running through the water on their way onto the beach after that U-wing went down and crashed. And so they were part of that relief team. But they could have actually, brought in a lot of women, stunt women, that sort of thing. Even if they didn't have dialogue on the planet, they could have been visibly present. And that was a missed opportunity, I think, in the film.
I would probably say the beginning when Jen's mom passes away, when she's, I would say, just killed. I wanted more. I wanted to see more of her. And like I said, I haven't read the book, so I don't know, I don't really know her story, but, it's just the way they just gave us a little glance of her and then boom, she's dead. I would have changed that. Like, don't tease me and not tell me her story.
They learned nothing from Incredibles. At least Jen's mom didn't. You don't monologue.
Yeah, exactly. Like, you can't tease me. Oh, here's her mother, and her mom has this, this kyber crystal necklace, and just say trust the Force, and then 10 seconds later she's killed, and that's it. There's no other mention of her. We don't get a flashback of her. So that scene, I would have changed that.
Okay, other than nods to Vader in this movie, because there are a lot of nods to the movies that came before it, what was your favorite little Easter egg that popped up that you were like, ooh, when you saw it?
Probably the Rebels. Seeing the ghost, and I think it was Adjua that actually pointed out to me. And he's like, "Hey, did you see the ghost?" And I was like, "Wait a minute, what?" So
yeah, you actually missed a bunch of things, because I heard them calling General Syndulla, and I was like, "Oh, they just called General Syndulla." She was like, "Huh?" You missed a bunch of things, yeah. But
I know. So he pointed out.
But that's actually one of the great things about this film in terms of Gareth Edwards putting all of that detail and those layers in. That's something that J.J. Abrams, didn't do. He spent a great deal of time, and he and Kasdan spent a great deal of time putting together that script, which I thought the script was outstanding in episode 7 last year. But one of the things that they didn't do a lot of is layer the scenes with just populate them with all kinds of things. And Gareth went back to that, and to throw in those nods to Rebels, and to throw in, some of those Easter eggs that we got not only in the last sequence in the space battle, but even in some of the stuff that we see in other parts of the film as well. It's like you have to see it 3 or 4 or 5 times to catch up.
Exactly.
That's there.
Exactly. And that's what I had to do, because I was like, after I missed a couple of the scenes, I had a couple people text me and say, "Hey, did you see this? Did you see that?" I said, "Oh, wait a minute. I have to go see it again." This time, I was still hyped, but I could take my time and really focus so that I didn't really miss anything. So it was much better the second time.
All for the elusive hunt for Chopper.
Right. I had to see the film the second time, and it was actually pretty clear. You could see and hear him. But the first time, the whole scene just goes right past you, and your eyes are looking to the right. So you never even think about looking to the left until somebody pointed it out. I was like, wait a minute, really?
Yeah. Well, you're following the actor running.
Running, yeah. He meets Mon Mothma.
Yeah, so it's not natural where you. As a matter of fact, I've gone a couple times now and been pointing at the left side of the screen. I'm like, look that way, look that way. Right. It's pretty much if you look lower left, you'll see about every Easter egg from Rebels.
Exactly.
And what was crazy, of course, is when the ghost flies right into the center of the screen, and somehow I missed that too until I went back and saw it in IMAX 3D, and they were like, well, yeah, not only do you see it coming in from hyperspace, which I already saw, I didn't realize that you're looking, at Admiral Raddus, and the camera is to his back. The ghost goes right in front of you, blasting at TIE fighters, and then banks to the right. And I was like, wait a minute. And I had to actually see it, like I said, 2 or 3 times to catch that one. And it's like right in front of you. You miss it.
I wonder too, when we get it on video, we'll see even more stuff. Just when people can really slow it down. So beyond the movie, did you get the books, the collectibles? What kind of ways did you enjoy Rogue One as beyond the film?
I have a Jyn figure. I bought a Jyn figure. I have that. I really would love one of those jackets, but they're just really too expensive. I don't know. It's just different things. Like I said, the only thing I have is the Jyn figure. That's all I purchased as a collectible.
Yeah, I pretty much have, in terms of the figures, I have the entire cast in one form or another. I like to get those small, the Disney figurines that are about probably 2.5, maybe 3 inches tall. And they come on those stands, and it gives you like the entire cast that's there. Because I don't really have a whole lot of space, but I did get some of the bigger figures, and the ones that I like right now are the ones that are about 6 inches. They're made out of die-cast metal, and I wasn't a fan of what they put out for TFA, but for this one, the detail is very, very strong, and they look better than the Hasbro figures. And I have a Jyn of that one. I have a Cassian, and I have the Death Troopers. And I also have Bodhi Rook. And so that's the kind of stuff that I have. I was going to get the visual guide, but my father actually got it to me for Christmas, so I was like, I ain't worried about that. That's pretty much it for right now.
Was there anything in the visual guide? It's a beautiful book. Was there anything in there that you read it and you were like, oh, yeah, wow, that's really cool, just that added something to the movie?
Start with page 1.
Well, that's a recommendation.
It goes through the entire book. I mean, Pablo has really been, nailing a lot of this stuff and just layering, just so much of what we see. And that's one of the things that I always looked forward to when I was little. Jennifer Landa online actually did a little Vine using the Empire Strikes Back pop-up book, which I haven't looked at in 30 years. And it just reminded me of just so much of all of that stuff that we used to get in between the film, when we didn't have a TV show, when we didn't have the internet to communicate with people, when we didn't have a lot of the stuff that we have nowadays, one film a year, that sort of thing. You live that experience through the books and through the collectibles and through, did you all have those storybooks with the little record? It tells you when to turn the page.
Yeah.
All that kind of stuff. All of that. I remember a lot of that more than I remember actually seeing the films. And sometimes you forget and your mind plays tricks on you. You start to think that part of what you saw in those books or heard in those audio clips were actually in the film. You go back and you realize, oh, that was just in the books or whatever it happens to be. And so that's what really enriches, the experience. And Pablo recently has been doing an excellent job with a lot of that stuff, including the art Super.
I feel left out because I have not purchased the visual guide yet, but that's on my list of things to get. So
you'll enjoy it, and it'll be there. It'll still be there. So obviously we've seen Saw Gerrera, and this will be we'll get ready to close it out. But if you could take the Rebels is 2 years ahead of Rogue One. If you,
or 2 years behind you,
or 2 years behind. Well, yeah, we have to catch up. If there could be any other character in Rebels from Rogue One, who would you like to see more of?
I would love to see Cassian.
Yeah, and the same, because I think that his journey, as I said before, really gets you into some of the issues that you would have. Even when you're involved in a noble cause, there are a lot of issues that come up as well. And between Cassian and Saw Gerrera, I think those two characters give you an opportunity, because I would love to spend more time with the Empire. I would love to see more of those kinds of characters, get more, treatment and more depth in what's happening with them from their perspective. One of the reasons why I liked Lost Stars so much is because you do get that with the main, protagonist. But it's like, if you're not going to do that on Rebels, you can still do it with the heroes on the rebellion side, and you can get into a lot of those meatier issues with a character like Saw, and also with Cassian or other people that are similar to them.
And then, as Star Wars fans that are really engaged, was there any way that you got to help maybe someone who's not as much of this hardcore fan explain something about the movie, get them interested in the movie, explain something after the movie? Did you have any experience like that?
Actually, I had several people. They won't post it on on my wall, on my timeline or anything, but I did have several people text me about, well, where's the story on the timeline, of Star Wars? I had a lot of people asking me about characters. They would send messages, and I graciously answered their questions. So, it wasn't too bad. But I did have a couple of people just ask me pretty much, where does the story fall on the timeline of a Star Wars?
And I didn't have a whole lot of that, because most of the people that I either know or I work with, a lot of them are not necessarily super fans, but they're pretty decent fans in terms of what they know and what they experience. And so I never really had to spend a lot of time explaining a lot of stuff to people. I usually just get into, nice deep conversations, and that's including my coworkers, that includes my students, all kinds of things. And so I've actually enjoyed myself the last year or two, where people can get back into the franchise because these new films are out.
You guys, this was a wonderful discussion, and I really appreciate you taking the time, because I just like hearing other people's experiences and how much they loved enjoying it and doing it together. Is there anything that you either of you've written or shared about Rogue One, or that you would like for people to go look out for, or just your Twitter feeds? Because I can put things in the show notes. So
I was going to say, I don't blog anymore. I don't blog. you can take that out if you like. I don't blog anymore. I'm just really just all about Fangirls Going Rogue now, and just handling the the whole social media thing for things for Fangirls Going Rogue. That's about it. I love Marvel, DC, so that's really much I post about now. So.
Yeah, like I said, I've gotten into a lot of really good discussions with all kinds of people in all different forms and mediums. Nothing formalized in terms of writing an article or something along those lines, but people might assume that my blog posts are articles in and of themselves because they tend to be pretty long. But like I said, nothing formal. But yeah, I've had some really great discussions.
You have some really good thoughts, so you need to put some of them down in writing because you have great articles on other things. So,
as you may already know, I was already a part of Coffee with Kenobi, and I was doing a number of blogs for them, and then I just have so many things going on simultaneously that it doesn't leave me a lot of time to do at least what I want to do in that way. So sometimes I'll come back when I have a chance, and usually that's in the summertime when things calm down just a little bit. But I know 10 months out of the year, I'm on lockdown.
So that brings us to the end of this really fun discussion about Rogue One, fandom, friendship, and having fun. I loved listening to Adjua and Sandra explain how they met, how they fell in love with Star Wars, and just talk about it, have a good time. Again, you can go look at all the information on our website if you want to look at the show notes for context, but I'll give them real briefly here again. And as always, leave us a review. A wonderful thought always helps, raises our profile. So here you go. You can talk to us, Fangirls Going Rogue at FG Going Rogue on Twitter and Instagram, Tricia at Fangirl Cantina, Teresa at Ice Gold Penguin, Sarah at Jedi Tink, Sandra, who you heard tonight, at Geek Chic 9, and Adjua is at ADJUA_ADAMA. So that's at Adjua Adama on Twitter. And then Facebook, you just type in Fangirls Going Rogue and you can come into our discussion group, ask for an invite. Tumblr, fangirlsgoingrogue.tumblr.com. And if you want to leave us a voicemail on this episode or any episode, 331-21-EWOKS, or that's 331-213-9657. And if you want to send us an email, contact at fangirlsgoingrogue.com, or use our contact page on our website, fangirlsgoingrogue.com. And t-shirts, always visit our store. That's the one way you make offset any of our cost, is if you go and buy a t-shirt from us, and that also shares your love for our podcast out with the rest of the world. So we hope you enjoyed this. Let us know if you did. Give us feedback. We love to hear from you. Until next time, yub.
Are you with me?
All the way.
May the Force be with us.